prospective watchers and viewers and listeners, audio people. Welcome. This is our first, I would say, the first official video that's like our normal video because the first two that y'all should have watched before this was our welcome back. So this is like the first video or first recording that we're like back in our like regular schedule of events. But yes, welcome to Perspectives with
Lisette.
and Martina. All right, you guys. So thanks, yeah, for tuning in. Again, yeah, if you watched our first two, welcome back videos, you'll kind of have a little idea of what's in store for this season of Perspectives, I would say. This season that we're in. Yeah. Um, and a lot of it, if you watch the first two videos, some of our, our usual selves, and we have some other things that we'll bring to the table. We didn't get into everything, but just kind of gave a highlight. Um, but what we wanted to spend, I don't know if we call this a series yet, or maybe this is just a first video. I don't know. I don't know yet. But, as always, we kind of do like a little prep before we jump into things. And so we were like, yeah, okay, what do we want to focus in on right now? And we were like, let's talk about why men hate women. It's a great one to start off with. That's so great, especially where we are in this current country of ours, the people watching from other countries. Thank you so much, if you are watching from another country. Um, but if you're also watching here in the States, thank you for that as well. But I say that here in this country because we wanted to kind of talk about why men hate women as it relates to women in politics or women in, I would say, well, more politics. I think down the line we'll probably get into other kind of subtopics as to why
Mhm.
men hate women. But this one we thought it was ever present to talk about why men hate women as it relates to politics. And
Mhm.
again, both of us are both being women, women of color. We live in a blue state. We live in a blue county. The whole damn state's blue. So, um, just kind of wanted to look at it because obviously we talk a lot about politics. We have a lot of content over the next few years focusing on politics. So we thought, yeah, let's start with this. There's a lot going on in this country and a lot going on across the world as it relates to women in politics. But yeah, I can keep talking, but I'll turn it over to Lisette so we can let's get it.
Yeah. No, and I'll just kind of bring us a little bit to like a full circle moment. Like if you've been
Yes.
listening to us and watching us for since we started, we did have a series around why men hate women.
Yeah, about that.
Um, so it was back, so feel free to go watch that. I think we took a
Yes.
very different approach than we're taking right
Very
now.
different approach. Yeah.
But you know, in us talking and thinking through, like we knew it was a topic that we wanted to revisit. We knew it was a topic that, it's relevant and it's gonna be continually relevant or for us and just in not just like Martina, you mentioned not just in our current country, but just across the world. There's still a lot of disparities when it comes to women, equality issues, equity issues, and things like that. And we were just we were we were like, where do we start? Like, what can we have so many thoughts and
So
so
much
so
as
many things, and we're
always.
like, where can we start? And I remember looking at a little outline of topics that we want to touch on, and I was like, well, what if we just kind of start from this why men hate women and look at from a from a political lens, and and if and for me it was like, we had another woman candidate here in the United States, who through different circumstances became our candidate, sort of was brought up and had so much support and had so many people behind her, had like different generations behind her, different demographics as well. And I think a lot of even women rallied behind her as well. And yet we ended up with who we
Mm.
have,
Who we have.
who we got. And it again, you know you have someone who was qualified, who had everything to sort of really say like, yeah, we can take the step, we can break that glass ceiling, very similar to when we had when Hillary was also running. and
Yes, ma'am.
it's, different candidates, same result. Like, and and it was just one of those moments where you're just like, what will it take to see not just a woman president, but just to see women, especially, I mean, for you and I in this country, to see women as uh apolitically respected and thought of as powerhouses, and not just as, like, oh, tokens, I guess would be the word that I would, put out there, but just, you know, as individuals who can lead, who can make those power moves, who can make those decisions. And I think that's just it's just interesting because there's just so many different factors, and not factors. Factors is not the right word, but that's the only word I got in my head right now.
That's what comes to mind. That's okay.
Um,
Okay.
that just continue to keep us women to not be seen as actual political powerhouses. And there are so many great women who are out here trying, who are out here, doing the work that needs to be done. Stepping up in spaces where men are failing to step up in the political circles. And yet we're still seen as emotional, as people that, can't really lead, or that, should like be quiet, or you're not seen as, smart enough, good enough, whatever it is. And it's just, it's pretty like, I think it's frustrating, but it's also just like, man, is it are we ever going to see women as individuals who can lead, especially in the highest position that we have in
Mm.
this country? um and again, another candidate, same result as last time, that we had a qualified, I think I would say, like, maybe even overqualified, like just had all the overqualified for their who they were competing against. And a lot of people would be overqualified.
Absolutely. I mean, the bar is in the trash.
I'm like, so it's just, so today, today's conversation will just kind of talk through, give our thoughts, but really just, we even like pulled up some things from the unwomens.org website,
Hmm.
and some of the stats and facts that they have on there was just like, also like, not mind-boggling, but just sort of like, man, is it gonna really take that long to see equality in, in leadership positions just across the world? And as much as I want to say it surprised me, it definitely did it. Like, I was just like,
Hmm.
in that. But I don't know, Martina, I'm just like,
It's a tough, it's like we have so many ways to approach this topic. So as
mm-hmm,
people know, we'll probably be like, oh yeah, yeah, it's all, but it all comes back full circle. But when you were talking about, our Kamala, when she was running, obviously she wasn't given a fair chance, really.
I would say,
By
yeah,
Biden,
that's a fair assessment.
yeah, she wasn't given a fair assessment, because Biden should have never even announced that he was going to run again. See,
Mm,
that would have been the time right there. But then again, a part of me is like, would it have mattered if she had an early start or started where she is now? Would
yeah.
it have helped? People say, oh, well, we should have had a primary. We should have done this. She only had 100 days. I mean, we'll never know unless she runs again and has more time to, voice her politics and put herself more out there on the political stage. So we'll probably never know. But obviously, I think most of us people who watch us have, saw, the commentary, that's what it news people. I say news people because I can't think of the word. News anchor people, or people out there with their microphones during the time of the election when people obviously were, I think primarily talking to men folk, and was, they didn't have the highest opinion of Kamala, and most of them they just would say they just don't want a woman. Or some of them
Hmm.
didn't come out directly and say that, but they didn't have a reason they for like not liking her. It
Yeah.
was just, well, I don't think she's the right fit. Okay, but what does that mean? We don't know what to mean. So, we got some of those messages. And you talked about a little bit earlier on where how she had a lot of support. A lot, I
Hmm.
think, obviously from women. And even we look at the entertainment and the performing arts
Yeah.
world, she had all three groups of the racial groups of women. She had black women with Beyonce, Taylor Swift with the white ladies, and we had J-Lo came out for the
Hmm.
Latinos. And even Rihanna, who's not even
Yeah.
a citizen, but her children are citizens here in this
Yeah.
country. So it's like everybody, all these major, some of the probably most celebrated female artists, really, not really, there's a female, yes, they're female, but most celebrated artists in the world still could not rally enough people. And, I think there's a lot of criticisms about how she ran the election. And, people are going to be assessing that for years and years to come. The same with Trump. It's just going to be assessments from now to the end of time of
Yeah.
what could have been done or all this and whatnot. And I think, again, it was just kind of bring this conversation. And I'm looking because I'm like, why do men not want, like, I guess men just really showing up and supporting women? I mean, obviously, with Kamala, she had, Mark Cuban came
Hmm.
out, publicly supported her. Then they had, other, I think, I can't remember the exact group, but I just remember what's that actor's name? Oh my God. His name is Jeff Bridges. He came out.
Mm.
And I remember he came out and it was like white dudes that support Kamala. He's like, hey, I'm a dude. I'm white. I support Kamala, you know?
Yeah.
And it was a reference to obviously his movie that he made.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yes. But so we did have momentum and it was great that we had, people like that come out and support. But,
Hmm.
part of me is like, it wasn't enough. And then also, there's still this idea, which I don't know, again, we may never know if the election was rigged, obviously, because what so many people didn't even vote, you know? And so it's not like we had this overwhelming amount of people to even help get her elected. Obviously, they didn't want to vote because they're focusing on something in some other country that has nothing to do with us, and that,
Hmm.
dictated how they voted. They mad about this, that, and another, and they didn't vote. I'm obviously not a Trump supporter, but people who did vote and that voted for him, well, at least they exercised their right. That's their right
Yeah.
as a U.S.
Yeah.
citizen. And I think of for people sitting here and saying, "Oh, well, these sort of things are not going to come into question, like women having the right to vote." For all these people out here who didn't vote, who are particularly women who didn't vote, you know, what is it? It's been over 100 years since white women in this country,
Yeah.
got the right to vote. And so, it wasn't until the 60s, the rest of us ladies had the right to vote. But over 100 years ago. So women really fought for this up until like the 60s, and even now, like we're having to go back and like fight for these things all over again. So all this to say, I'm like, we have women who have fought for the right for us to vote and to be here. And then we have women, and I know there were women in this group, I don't know the percentage, women who chose not to vote or women who voted for Trump. And the thing is, again, vote for who you want to, at least you voted. But women who voted for Trump, I will never understand it. Um,
Mm.
don't matter how you try to cook it up and fry it to me and serve it to it on a plate, I'll never understand it. Um, but that's your right to be able to vote. And I just always think, are these women, would they be okay? These same women who voted for him, I feel like these would be some of the women who would be okay not having the right to vote.
Yeah.
This is one.
No, that's such an interesting comment of like, you know, those same women would be okay with not having the right to vote. Like, and I think there is some truth to that. I think if you I mean, I agree 100% with like if you voted for Trump, Orange Man, as I call him
Because he orange. That's what he is.
on my everyday life. um there is a little bit of that self-hatred.
Yeah,
You know,
that's a good point. Yeah.
I think there is a little bit of that self-hatred. I think there you've been convinced by the patriarchy that you should hate the progressiveness that women have had over whatever the last 100 years and whatnot and all these like that you should hate that you should not like that. And I think there are a lot of women who again, do what you want to do with your life. If that's the choice, if that's what you want to do, but don't force it upon others either,
Yes.
right? Like if you don't want to vote, don't vote. Like like if you don't want to exercise that right, that's your choice, right? I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, but don't vote against removing that choice for other women.
Yeah.
And I think that's what boggles my mind because the patriarchy, the hatred towards, you know, feminism, right? Like, feminist and all these things, like this hatred towards it has made women think like, oh no, like we're going the wrong path. We're going down a slippery slope and all these things. I'm like, no, we are allowing women to make choices that we all should be able to make, right? I mean, we can talk about reproductive health, we can talk about all these other things, and it's like the fact that you continue to vote against the best interest of not just yourself but of other women,
Mm-hmm.
it's frustrating and it's maddening because I'm like,
Very maddening.
I was like, how dare you impose your what you believe and what you want on and force it? Like you're just trying to force it. Like it's not even you trying to have a conversation with me and just telling me your point of view and what you believe in and what your perspective is and all these things. It's versus like, no, this is the way it should be. Like I completely agree. I'm like, you want to agree with everything this current administration is doing, that is absolutely right. And I have my thoughts of what you are and who you are and all those things, and
Mm-hmm.
we can get into that later. But I'm like, but the fact is there is this underlying hatred towards women, like, and I think that's why we continue to have this conversation because it's like even us as women fall trap to that, like fall trap into hating ourselves, into hating other women, into not supporting it because that's what the patriarchy and men, particularly in this country and really across the world, have like accomplished is sort of like pitting against us against each other, like and it's like it's so now this is mind-boggling. Like that's I think the right word of like how
Yeah.
we can all, be in that. But then and then
No,
you
right? It's like, but
then you have the women who voted for Trump, right? Who voted for Trump, who are now out here being like, "Oh, I didn't think it was going to be
that's stupid to me.
this bad, or I didn't think it was gonna affect me directly, or like I think, what do you mean you didn't think women? You are a woman. Like you identify as a woman. Like if it's gonna affect you just because you thought that your skin color was gonna somehow
Girl,
save
right.
you. Like
Think it can
no,
save you.
it's because hatred towards women has nothing to do with skin color at the base level.
Mm-hmm.
There's different levels of hatred once you start taking into skin of color and all these things like that. Now there's levels that come into play, but hatred towards women, it's right there across the board. Like it includes white women, it includes all of us, like the spectrum of color, it includes all of us when it comes to that. But that's the part that, and that's what I'm just like, I hope you get everything you voted for.
True.
Because when I'm just like, if you are out here complaining and sort of saying that, um, and even men, like I've heard some men who are like, oh, I didn't think it was gonna, affect me or the women in my life or whatever. And I'm like, hope you get what you voted for because I didn't vote for that. It's like it was very clear what
Mm-hmm.
this current administration was going to do and wanted to do against, not just from a gender perspective, but class and all and ethnicity and race and all like their agenda has been very clear. Like there was no like I'm being gaslit. No, they weren't gaslighting anybody. They were they had a whole Project 2025 plan out here.
Right. It
And
was
y'all
like,
just used to
yes.
not think that was real. Y'all thought it was some like liberal propaganda out here that we were making up. I was like, no. Anyway, I don't know if I made any sense in any of what I
I don't
just
know if I said it made sense either, guy, because again, we're trying to stick to a certain time, people.
to be mindful.
Okay.
But but,
Moving on.
but
But
yeah,
it just like, and I guess it's always for me, it's like trying to understand why there's so much hate because there are obviously we all see the posts and things like that
yeah,
because people get real brave on social media, and I know
yeah.
I say a lot of stuff too, but some things just don't need to be said. You some things you need to keep to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
But when some men out there, obviously when you see like the post about like supporting women or talking about Kamala or women in politics and why can't people vote for women? Obviously, there's always the men in the comments that it seem like, well, it had nothing to do with that she's a woman. Well, then what was it about? Because
Yeah,
all of her policies, and
yeah.
then I don't know, you know why I say that the policies I know of, because I don't know all of her policies. I'll be honest. If I don't know something, I don't know it. I'm not afraid to say I don't know it. The
Yeah.
policies I know of were most people said they were voting for that other one for, she had better policy.
Yes.
So it's people's like, oh, the economy. Her economic plan was better. Okay.
Yeah.
So, but I don't quite, it doesn't equate. And if you didn't know that, again, Google is still free. I don't know how much longer since y'all voted for that man and all these tariffs are coming in. Okay. And these countries are not planned. Okay. So I don't know how long Google might be free. I'm just saying. But it's just always so interesting to me when I was like, and they say, oh, well, because I know again, economics was a thing that people used to say they were voting
Yeah.
against her and voting for him. Immigration came back up. Well,
Mm-hmm.
I think definitely with immigration now, we ain't gotta worry about that. Who the fuck want to come here now? Who want to come here?
There's
Don't nobody want
warnings.
to, don't
There's
nobody want to come
countries
here.
putting warnings and saying like be
Oh my
careful, don't
God. Isn't
travel
that
to the
so
US.
embarrassing? It's
Yeah.
so embarrassing when other major countries,
Mm-hmm.
hell, some of them may not be major countries, but still countries out there that are
Warnings there, people.
a number of them have warnings are coming to the United States. And that to me is very telling and it's very sad. But then you have a group of people who are like, well, why are you worried about what other countries think you blah, blah? Because we do need allies. If you live in this world, you're
Yeah.
gonna need some help. You're
Yes.
gonna need some allies. And so
Mm-hmm.
when them other ones leave him sitting up there by himself, who you gonna depend on? You're picking
Yeah.
fights with all the friends that's done been here for us. And again, I know some of these other countries, they don't have probably maybe some of the best policies. Maybe, they've picked on us, whatever the situation may be. All this that's just happening is entirely unnecessary to happen the way that it is. Because I won't say, like, again, we see that federal workers and things are being laid off, and we see tariffs and all that. Some of these things, maybe some of these things would have happened anyway. And that's just, what that administration wanted to do. But the way that it's happening, the rudeness about it. And see, I'm getting off topic because we're talking about women and politics. I'm bringing it back. Um, when we look at the rudeness and the disrespect that's behind it and how it's happening, the fact that we have people across this country who are losing their jobs, and people are okay with that. They're okay with that. People's like, oh, well, it's corrupt and fraud and all this. Okay, but that's never going to stop. It is politics. There's always going to be corruption. And the person you think who's going to get rid of it is to have some of the biggest corruption out there and will after all this is over because we got to fight for that not to get that third term. We can't be having that.
Oh
But
God.
anyway, to bring it back to like I guess kind of the overall picture here talking about just women in politics. Over this last year, we've had a female president of Mexico, very first time.
Yeah.
During COVID, that superstar leader in New Zealand. I cannot
Yeah.
recall
Oh
the name,
yeah.
but doing great things over here in the world. Um, but then, when you look at it and you say, oh man, this is the first time Mexico ever had a female president, that's also kind of sad. How long has Mexico been Mexico? Mexico was
Yeah.
Mexico before Mexico.
Yes.
You know? So it's like this is the first time in history a female president. Mexico, you know what? Mexico beat us out here in the United States. They have they have their first female president. We still ain't able to have ours over here,
Oh.
you know? And so that's very telling in itself. And of course, there's always going to be some people have something to say about it. People say she believes in this, believing in that. And again, these same people, I don't know how they just have these blinders on with that man because you talking about her or talking about this leader over in Greenland and somebody, but what about your own leader? Your own leader is not a good person. Not
Hmm.
a good person. And you know what? That's just how it is. That's all I'm
I
gonna say for right now.
No, I think you bring up so especially that last point of like the blinders that Orange Man supporters have. Like
Hmm.
it's as if you can like criticize because they're not even blinders, they're just like you're just covering because blinders at least you can at least see forward, right? Like you're just
No,
you're
they
just covering your eyes and ears and everything. Like there's
everything.
but it honestly is so true because you're sometimes you're criticizing, other leaders and other individuals for the same exact thing that your leader is doing, or even is doing far worse things
Yes.
than that. And I think it's such, but again, it's that like how much does him being a man play into people just being like, yeah, boys
Like
will be
whatever.
boys,
Yes.
you know,
Yes.
like boys will be boys, but it and then you hold women of all ages
Such
to this
high esteem.
ridiculously standard
Yeah,
like
not esteem,
that none of
standard.
us can
Yes.
ever like reach, right? Like it's like, and again, like it goes back to, I mean, we've talked about it just being, women of color and people of color like having to like be better than your counterparts and be better
Hmm.
and all these things, like you're always having to be better and do this is the same thing with being a woman, right? Like you always have to be better and you always, because the bar is so high, as a woman. And then the bar gets even higher when you're a woman of color. It gets
Hmm.
higher when you're a Latina. It gets higher when you're a black woman. Like the fact that that bar for black women is like through the roof. Like it's not even,
And don't add any other things like disabilities.
yeah, like,
It's a
like,
whole different thing.
so like the bars, and then you just have like the bar is like, I don't know where the bar is at for white men. It's
I don't know if it's here. I don't know
like
if there's a bar.
I don't think you can't even like see it on the camera. Like,
Can't see it. It's invisible.
but I think as we continue this conversation, as we continue this sort of like series that we kind of started off for this year, I think we're definitely going to circle back to leaders across the globe and talking about, like, you brought up um the president of Mexico, and just how she's just like has met Trump blow for blow. Like she has been like, nah, I'm not stepping back. And I think
Hmm.
people who see that, and and the comments I've seen, TikTok and all the things, people from this country are like, oh my god, like she's like nothing, or all, like, no, like you're just not used to seeing a woman like being able to step up, and especially from a country that for the longest time, the United States has sort of undermined, has sort of
Considered
been,
inferior.
there you go. I'm like, what is the word I'm looking for? That's exactly, like, considered inferior. I mean, like they could never be like us. And I'm like,
Hmm.
have you been to that country? Because some things are
Girl,
way
some
better than there are here. And the fact that now you have a woman leader, um, and I wish I could have people that live in Mexico come and tell maybe that's something we'll do. Maybe in the future we'll have people who
I
are
know
from
it'd be
Mexico.
easier for you to get that connection than me.
Yeah. I mean, let's just kind of bring, but I think that is something. And then, as we kind of wrap up this first
Mm.
episode, um, around this, as you can tell, we're really passionate. We have a lot of things on our head around this topic,
That's a given.
and and
It's a
then
given.
us, we'll go off on tangents, but we'll circle right back
Always.
into this. But definitely thinking through of just like other women leaders, not just here in the United States, who are stepping up and sort of
Hmm.
showing like, we have AOC. She has been
Yes.
fighting on that. We have Jasmine Crockett, I think is her name. There we
Hmm.
go. Who has also, is becoming, one of our sort of rock stars and superstars in the political landscape as a woman. Maxine Waters, who has been,
Oh yeah.
um, and I think you still have other women who have been in sort of leadership. You still have Kamala Harris, who's there and trying. Hillary Clinton is still, has
Hmm.
influence and wanting to do that and all these things. And I think the more and more we have what just recently in Wisconsin, that woman, I don't remember her name.
Remember
She
her
just
name, but
won, when we record,
the
she just
court.
won
Yeah.
in the
Judge.
Supreme Court in Wisconsin.
Yeah.
And things like so there are women out here who are trying, but they keep, hitting these barriers and hitting these things. And a lot of it has to do with um women not being seen as relevant, not being seen as
Mm.
important. And again, I think I'll go back to, our first, series around this is like there is this hatred towards women, and there's this underlying sort of hate that just, for whatever reason continues to go unchecked and sort of like not talked about a lot. And just sort of, been, being told that we're just too emotional to be leaders. Like, and then, they try to use our things that happen to us on a monthly basis as sort of this weapon against us of like, you don't know what she's gonna do, because
The
that
same thing for them. We don't know what they're gonna do after.
I was like, we go to work, we do everything we can do, and we're out here bleeding all day long.
And we're the reason that the world is still going.
And I'm like, and y'all gonna
Okay.
try to use that against us when there are women who suffer during that time of the month who suffer greatly and yet show up and show
Hmm.
out every
Like
day
nothing's wrong.
like
Yeah.
nothing's wrong. You'll never know. You'll
Hmm.
never know. But on that note, come back because we're gonna continue this conversation.
Yeah.
And we're just gonna continue keeping it real, telling our thoughts, our perspectives. But y'all let us know in the comments. I am
Yes.
on Instagram. Make sure you're following us. You're liking the videos. And things like that, because we want to hear from y'all and want to know what, if any of this resonated, anything that you want to add to the conversation or a question that we can
Hmm.
explore during this series. I don't know how long this series is going to be. We might
Yeah.
might do a couple of episodes, but definitely sure we're going to continue at least one more one more conversation around this, because there's so much more that we want to talk about, just women in leadership and the political participation of women across the world, and also the role that faith and religion has
Oh
in
yes.
keeping women oppressed. So that's something that we'll touch around it, and I think has lent into sort of this underlying hatred towards
Absolutely.
women, and that. So come back for that one. That one, I'm very
She's very excited for that one. She was
I
like,
am
"Oh,
very like,
can we
yes.
talk about that too?" And I was like, "Yeah, I mean, it's all connected." We talking about.
Because man, someone, well, anyway, well, if I start now, we're gonna be in here for
We'll
like
be
two
here.
hours. All right, everyone. Well, thank you again, Martina. I don't know if you anything you want to close us out with.
Nope, I think that was wonderful. Can't
All
top
right.
it.
Well, thank you. We will see you, talk to you next time.
Yeah.